Okay, welcome everybody. It's just gone 7:05. It's the 4th of April 2022, and this is the second Collab session for PMAD020. Let me just get the slideshow going and share my screen as well so that we are on the right track. Let me share. Okay, hopefully you should be seeing the slides. Yeah, that's showing up nicely. So PMAD020, second collab, 4th of April. What I'm going to do tonight is go through just the overview again, not the stuff about project management that I covered last week, but mainly an overview of the assignment, and then in detail around the specific part of the assignment that is now due next week, Tuesday. Feel free to ask questions, either unmute and ask questions verbally or in the chat box if you want to ask that way. That's also an option to do it that way. So let's launch in. Just a reminder, the textbook is Project Management from Kickoff to Closeout. It's published by Edge Education, and it's got a bunch of authors. I'll show you that reference later. The assignment is made up of 3 submissions plus your ICE tasks. The ICE tasks constitute or make up 10% of your total course mark, and I will publish the ICE tasks as soon as the platform goes live. I see that, as I said on last week, the course is loaded, but so far your students have not been loaded onto that, and it's a bit annoying and frustrating to say the least. I have raised that again with the head of department for our section, and she is chasing up as to why that has still not been set up correctly. So I apologize for that, and I hope that they get that sorted very quickly. But do not worry about due dates of ICE tasks. You know, there will be time for those. And then there are 3 tasks for the assignment. The first is due next Tuesday, the 12th of April. It's for 25%. Then POE task 2 is due at the end of May, the 30th of May. And the final POE task is on the 15th of June. The submission time for assignments is 9 p.m. on the due date. So you have to hand in by 9 p.m. Otherwise, you're too late. And as I think I said last week, just to warn you, if you like 3 or 4 minutes late, I am not able to mark it. You know, it's then closed, and you have to motivate and give a very good reason, a very valid reason as to why it was late. If you can't give a valid reason, and by valid I mean genuine, like serious illness, death in the family, something like that. You can't just say, my network went down as I was submitting. That's not a valid reason these days. But you can, whatever the reason is, you motivate for it. If that motivation is not accepted, you basically get 0 for that part of the submission. So watch out for that. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time on due date or before, and you're welcome to submit beforehand if you're ready, but you know, the cutoff is 9 p.m. on the due date. I've spoken last week about my communication response, etc., and getting hold of me. The software, and again I'll come back to this in more detail the week after next when I go through part 2 of the assignment, but I would suggest you use Team Gantt, and I'll go through that in more detail in due course. I'm going to come back a bit later to discuss referencing in more detail, but just a reminder that Varsity College does have a very strict policy around plagiarism, and sorry, the students just trying to get hold of me here on the WhatsApp group. That's weird. I wonder why the access is blocked. I'm just trying to see. I'm just going to copy this link again. Forgive me, there's a student on the WhatsApp group trying to okay, forgive me. I'm just trying to get the students into the meeting, the ones who need to be here. So, as I say, Varsity College has a strict policy. We are a tertiary institution. We take plagiarism and referencing very seriously. Academic integrity is an important thing. And I went through this last week, so I'm not going to repeat this. I will discuss referencing in a bit more detail at the end of the session tonight. What I must also just quickly do is just run through in terms of the assignment. At the beginning of the assignment, they give information around this. And so let me, forgive me, I want to just quickly go through, while we're talking about this, let me just explain what we mean by, I'm just going to stop sharing that and go back to here and say share specific application window, and I'm just going to share this the PDF document quickly. And I'm not going to go through this whole document again now, but there are very clear and specific instructions around what you may copy and not copy around plagiarism at the beginning. There's a whole referencing rubric that's given on the second page, very clear guidance on how many marks will be deducted for what sorts of errors, you know, what is technically correct referencing style, and so on, what minor errors and major errors. So the first couple of pages this first page, it's page 2 of the document, gives very clear guidance on what's expected of you. And I will also give you later a reference, a link to a video, which you might have been told about already, which gives clear guidance on referencing, very clear instructions. I'm just whizzing through here. Also at the end of the document, from page 27 through to the end, I would suggest you read this. If you haven't done any submissions before with Varsity College or any other academic institution, I would basically instruct you to read this. It's absolutely necessary that you be clear about this. Otherwise, you risk losing marks, or even worse, being given 0 for a submission. So, you know, it's all there, and there's further resources available. So look at from sort of page 27 onwards and on page 2 of the assignment. So let me go back to sharing the PowerPoint, share application screen and share that. Okay, so we're back to where we were. Hopefully you've got that. Sorry, and I also just want to make a note of who's here. Good, okay. So let's continue. Just a note in terms of contacts, we are sending out emails at the moment to both your Varsity College address as well as your private email addresses, and hopefully you're picking those up. I would suggest you put an auto forward on your Varsity College address so it goes through to your own address if you don't regularly check your Varsity College address. Just a reminder, in terms of projects are essentially made up of 2 phases: plan the work and then do the work. And good projects start right at the beginning of this first phase. You know, a good project does not get done by accident. You don't do good projects fly by the seat of the pants. on very small projects with very experienced staff, you can actually pull it off. You can do a great project. If it's a small project and it's just a handful of staff and or even just an individual, certain people have that capability, can do that. But the minute a project gets a little bit bigger, a little more complex, a little more length of time involved, you're extending a project now, it's going to take you 3 or 4 weeks to do, or a couple of months to do, or a couple of years, even worse, and lots of people involved, high budgets involved, then you've got to sit down and plan it carefully. And if you just go into it ad hoc or Harry casual about it, you're going to end up with a casual end product, and an end product that's going to be more costly than you expected, going to take longer than you had hoped for, and it's going to backfire on you. So plan the work carefully. And as we said, there are the 4 phases of the project, what I like to call CDEF: concept, design, execute, and finish. And what the assignment concentrates mainly on is the detailed design phase of the project. The first part of the assignment is to do with project initiation, more so. The concept stage, the phase 1 of the project, the C part here. And then the balance of the project has to do with the design or detailed planning around the project. Obviously, with it being assignment based, we can't actually kind of run a real project and see how that unfolds. And then the project gets closed and wrapped up. So again, just going through, the whole assignment is based on a chosen scenario. You're given 3 to choose from. There's Nsapho Care, SA Corporate Catering, and Jenga Cellular. Except for the first question, you must choose one and work with it all the way through your assignment and read the scenario very carefully. Just a query here. My audio is very soft. I don't know, is anyone else struggling to hear me? Anyone else struggling to hear me? I'm just, Ramon, it might be, I don't want to presume, but just check that the volume on your side is turned up. Leandri's saying it's good from her side. Oh, sorry.
Atom, yeah, it seems to be fine now.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I've sometimes joined a session and then it's been very quiet, and then I realized my volume was turned down on my own machine. So it's an easy mistake to make. If that's what happened, I don't know. But it sounds like it's come right. Great. Thanks for checking up on that. I'd rather have you interrupt me and get things working properly than like miss the thing because you were too afraid to chip in. So thank you for doing that. So task 1, which we're going to chat about in some more detail now, is made up of a couple of activities. Activity 1 has 3 questions. There's explain project complexity, which I've changed to talk about project success criteria. There's the project management office, and then there's the project phases. And then activity 2, question 1 is a feasibility study. Question 2 is a project proposal. Then task 2, which is due at the end of May, involves putting together a scope statement, a project charter, a work breakdown structure, a procurement plan, a budget, and project software. And again, I will go through that in quite some detail in probably 2 or 3 weeks' time, probably after Easter weekend, and that gives you a chance to start getting your heads around it. And I will give some early guidance on that through April and into early May. And then the final task is made up of 6 activities. The first 2 involve reworking in a small way your initial submissions and just giving some discussion around that. And again, it gives very clear instruction there, and I will elaborate on that when the time comes. You're not going to have long to do this task because your task 2 of your assignment is due at the end of May, and then you've only got 2 weeks until this task is due. So I would recommend that you fairly early on in the process start thinking about activity 4 and activity 5. Don't wait until the day before the assignment's due, because that's gonna ruin you. You just won't be able to do it. Activity 5 in particular should not be left to the last minute, because it will bite you if you do that. You must be thinking about that. In fact, you are forced to think about it, because there's a question in the second submission for the end of May that makes you begin setting up this Gantt chart. Okay, so activity 1 and 2 is a discussion of the first two submissions that you gave. Activity 3 is a short discussion around the ICE task that you did. Activity 4 is the resource matrix. Activity 5 is the Gantt chart using project software, and there's a short reflection report after that. Just some quick thing to note: in your assignment, you do not need to worry about COVID or Corona or lockdown, etc. In other words, you are free to imagine a normal world. Don't fuss too much about, or, if you do want to include it as something, then you can. But I'm just saying, I'm not looking out for that. I'm looking for dealing with a project in a normal, regular world. So don't worry about having to bring the reality of COVID into your assignment scenarios. So imagine a normal world. Right, question 1. For 10 marks, using the 3 projects you were given as project options, explain, using 5 facts, the concept of project complexity, except I've changed that now, using suitable examples. For each fact in your answer, state the fact as well as the suitable example. Now, marking rubric is pretty clear. It's given on page 9 of the assignment. And what I'm saying to us is, because project complexity is not specifically covered in the textbook, rather use project success criteria, which I've given on page 6 of the textbook, and use that as the basis for your answer. So in other words, explain the concept success criteria using the 3 projects, suitable examples, 5 facts, and so on. Okay, so just basically it's the same question, but instead of the word complexity, put in the word project success criteria, put in those words. Okay, so that will be activity 1. Are there, I'm going to continue, but let me just pause. Are there any questions on activity 1? If not, I will continue.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yeah, I did read the question. So it says you need to explain facts. So is that a fact that we need to talk about from one scenario that's been given to us, or from all 3 scenarios and apply it into one, or one of the 5 facts?
Okay, for this question, you, and only this question, you can refer to all 3 project scenarios. Okay, so you can refer to, you must refer to, preferably to all 3. In Care, and the other 2, the SA Corporate Catering, and the third one, I forget it right now.
Jenga Cellular.
Thank you, yeah, Jenga Cellular. So you refer to all 3, and you can choose which of those 3, from those 3, a total of 5 facts. Okay, so and discuss project success criteria. So success criteria, let me just call up in the textbook on page 6. It talks about budget, client expectations, disruption to the project, quality, schedule, and specification. Those are the 6. There are 6 given there.
Yeah.
So just looking at again, using the 3 projects you were given as project options, and now I just want to go back to, now I'm not sharing this, you're not seeing this on the screen, but I just want to go back to page, I think it was 6, where the marking rubric is for this one. Was it page 9? Sorry.
Page 9.
It's page 9, thanks. Okay, it says, using the 3 projects you were given as project options and using 5 facts. Now, the 5 facts are sort of the examples, explain the concept. So It's fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, fact 4. So it says the adequate fact is stated in the explanation, an adequate example is given of that fact, and it adequately demonstrates the application of the concept of, in this case, project success criteria. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, thanks.
Cool, well done. Okay, as I go through, and I'm quite serious here, if you've got a question, just unmute your mic and interrupt me, or type a question in the chat box. I'm quite happy with that. Question 2 is the following, and it's from the textbook pages 21 and 22. So I'm giving you the page references there. The Project Management Office section. Companies seeking more efficiency and tighter monitoring projects are opening PMOs, project management offices. Suppose that you are also going to open a PMO to support the management of the project you have now selected. And using examples and the scenario of the project you selected, describe 2 activities that the PMO will perform in your project in each of the following functions of Project Management Office. So they discuss on those pages, they discuss 5 different characteristics. There's governance, transparency, reusability, delivery support, and traceability. They only want the first 2 discussed, governance and transparency. And for each of those, they want you to say, what are 2 activities? What are 2 activities that you would do under governance what's involved in governance by a project management office? What sorts of things is a project management office going to be looking out for in terms of governance? And then what sort of things or activities is a project management office going to be undertaking in terms of transparency? And again, I would recommend that you perhaps do some Googling around that, look a bit wider than what's just in the textbook, and you'll probably get a little more guidance there as well. Okay. So again, if you've got any questions, just please just interrupt. Then question 3 is using examples in the scenario of the project you selected. So again, it's examples and the scenario of the project you selected. Explain what each of the project phases below will involve. And these are on pages 16 to 18 of the textbook. It's initiation phase, planning phase, execution, monitoring and control, and closure. And again, I would recommend you do some Googling around this, because there's a lot more simple information, very accessible information on the phases of the project. So what's involved in the initiation part of a project, getting a project through its idea phase and concept stage? What's involved in planning, in detailed planning and design of a project? What's involved in execution of a project? And again, you must apply this to the scenario that you have chosen. So if you've chosen Jenga Cellular, what sort of planning would need to be done for the Jenga Cellular project? What sorts of things would be done in executing that project, and so on? So discuss that. Now, you don't need to go on for pages and pages. Look at the mark allocation, and give sufficient answers for that. And again, the marking rubric should provide guidance from that side. Then for quite a bit more marks now, this is now for 30 marks, you need to discuss and report what the project feasibility study will include. And the following elements of the feasibility study are required. Okay, now these are on page, this whole chapter is covered from pages 43 through to page 54. So there's a whole bunch of information there about the sections that you would need to discuss in a feasibility study. So it's an executive summary, clear description of the project, analysis of a competitive analysis, which involves doing a SWOT analysis, operating requirements, financial projections, and recommendations and findings. Now, for this question, you must actually do these elements for the project that you have chosen. So in addition to giving a little bit of theory, you must apply that theory to the scenario you have chosen. And just to give, again, what I highlighted briefly last week, A feasibility study is a yes or no to doing the project. It's checking, is this project feasible? Is it worth us doing or not? And page 44 gives information as to why you do a feasibility study. And I would also suggest you read through the different types of feasibilities. Again, as I said last week, you do not have to do 5 or 6 different feasibility studies. You do one feasibility study and you can look at these different angles. Financial means, will it make money? Technically, can we do the project from a technical point of view? Do we have the technical kind of competence for it? Operationally, again, do we have the operational capacity to do that? Schedule-wise, do we have the time? Is this project being overly ambitious? We want it done in 6 months, and we all know it's actually going to take a year to do. The market, is there a business case? Will it sell? Will it make us money? Regulatory feasibility is, are we doing a project that complies with government and other regulations? And organizationally, what intangible impacts might it have on us that we are, we want to do this project, everything sounds fine, but it's actually going to have too much of a negative impact on other aspects of the business, and therefore it may not be feasible. So for the assignment, you need to write your feasibility study report using the headings as given from pages 47 to 50. Okay, so the headings are discussed from the bottom of page 47 through 48, 49, and 50. And those are discussed there. It's executive summary, clear description of the project, looking at the competitive landscape, which is the SWOT analysis. I would highly recommend you do a brief, simple SWOT analysis in your feasibility study, and operating requirements. Let me just go back to here. Operating requirements, financial projections, and then recommendations and findings. So that's all covered there on those relevant pages. Any questions around the feasibility study? So as I said, you need to, I'm not too worried about the theory of feasibility studies. I don't expect long discussions around that. What I'm more interested in is you actually writing a short and simple feasibility study report about this project. Imagine you are, discussing as a team, is it worth us doing this project or not? And like I said last week, a feasibility study is an objective, almost critical document where you are asking the tough questions. Can we do this project? Is it going to make us money? Do we have the time in which to do it? Are there unknown risks that make it not worth pursuing? What money is it going to make? What operating requirements are there? From a SWOT analysis point of view, what's the competitive landscape looking like, and so on. So you must write those things up as if you're writing a feasibility study report for your actual project. Okay, then question 2 of activity 2 is now moving from the feasibility study to the proposal. And remember what I said, a proposal is a document that's now trying to sell something. You are trying to sell this project, not to some buyer necessarily, but you're trying to persuade the reader that this is a project that's worth doing and we're going to go for it, and you want their backing, their support, and their money. So I call it's a bit like a selling document in the sense that you're trying to persuade. You're being optimistic. You've decided, let's say, based on the feasibility study, you've decided that this project is feasible and worth pursuing, and now you are trying to convey to the reader that they must get behind you. You're proposing to them that we go ahead with this project. And I've got a little bit more information in a coming slide about that, but there are several methodologies that can be used. I'm reading the question now. When creating a project proposal, using any of the methodologies or examples, outline the project proposal for the project and ensure to include the following sections, and these are covered on pages 54 to 60. Okay, and specifically page 56, 57, 58, 59, 60 goes through the specific components of a project proposal: a project title, a project overview, the problem statement, and background information. Now, a problem statement is not what problems do we foresee with this project. The problem statement has to do with why we are doing this project. Now, some projects might not have a problem that's being fixed. Let's say, let's give you an example of where there is a problem to fix. Let's say you're a power station and some component piece of equipment is broken down, and you're now doing a project that involves a shutdown of the power station and replacing this piece of equipment and starting up again. That's a problem statement that is you saying what was the problem that has given rise to this project. Okay. Now, in your projects, the three scenarios we're looking at, certainly SA corporate catering, there's no problem there. That's just background information that you're saying, why is this project happening? It's because there's this event happening, there's the SA tourism event, and you're doing the gala dinner for the women in tourism, and it's not a problem, it's an opportunity that you're trying to harness, okay, and you can make some money from this project. Jenga Cellular, there's a little bit more of a problem in here in that you're saying there's inadequate cell phone coverage in the area, and we see an opportunity to grow our business by providing more cell phone masts. So you're fixing, the project is arising out of the problem that you're trying to fix. And then with Insipo Care, again, it's not so much a problem as an opportunity that you're trying to harness. So the word problem statement is not always relevant, but what they're saying is what's given rise. Why are you doing the project? That's what this third item says here, the problem statement and background information. It's the why. Why are we doing this project? And then the project detail, you would describe in more detail what's involved in this project and the required resources. And again, for this question, you must actually do these elements. So don't just discuss theory. And as I said earlier, I'm not so interested in the theory because I can read that in the textbook and so on. I want to see, can you apply that? Can you actually write a proposal for your project? Trying to persuade the reader that, hey, this is the project. Here's a brief overview of it. This is why we're doing it, the background information. We've had this issue, or there's an opportunity here to grow our market, to get more customers, to get more members of our medical aid, whatever it might be. And the project involves the following aspects, and you would give some detail around that and what resources are required. And then have a conclusion to your proposal saying, we would value your support and input, or your whatever. So I chatted through these last week. Let me not repeat that the various types of proposals. This would be, in your case, probably for most of them, unsolicited. Possibly the SA corporate might be an informally solicited or even a formally solicited proposal. So a proposal is written from the context of you bidding for the work, either to an external client through a tender or a bid document, or to an internal manager or board. And as we've said here, those are the aspects you've got to give. And then there's often a question that arises, who is going to read this proposal? And let me give you some guidance here. If you are doing a proposal for the Insipo Care project, it's likely that you'll be writing for an internal audience, internal to your company. It's like you're employed by Insipo Care and you are writing a proposal to your own board of directors, your own bosses and managers to say, we are proposing that we develop this app that reminds patients when to take their medication. And you explain in the proposal why you think this is a good idea and a good project. Likewise, dropping to the last one, the Jenga Cellular project, it's the same thing. You're doing an internal motivational proposal to your own bosses to say, we've got a great opportunity here to put up some additional cell phone masts in the Pinetown district, and why is it worth doing? Okay. The middle one, your proposal there for the corporate catering women in tourism event, the gala dinner, your proposal there is going to the Department of Tourism, some boss, some senior person within the Department of Tourism who is funding this event, and you are hoping to get them to choose your company to do this project. You're hoping to be chosen to host this event, to run this event. And typically a proposal would be written in the future tense. By that we mean we will do X, Y, Z if we are selected, or if this project goes ahead, it will involve this, it will involve that, we'll be doing that. So you're writing as if it's going to be happening in the future, and you're bidding or proposing for that work. Any questions around the feasibility or the proposal? Okay, what I want to then go discuss is referencing, and give you some guidance and guidelines beyond what's just given as specifics in the assignment document itself, which you must read. What is going to happen, the way I generally work things is for task 1, I'm going to be quite strict about referencing and plagiarism. But if there's some mistakes and it's not very serious stuff, it's a learning opportunity, and I'll say just be careful next time you do X, Y, Z. So I'm not gonna, be vicious about deducting points on that. For task 2, I will be more strict, and if there are still errors there, I will pick them out and be more particular about task 2. And then finally for task 3, which is due in the middle of June, the last submission that you do, if you have referencing things, I've written here, no mercy. That sounds a bit harsh, but basically I'm just warning you, saying because of the requirements of Varsity College to be careful and uphold good academic discipline, I need to make sure that that is done, and I will follow that. So here's some guidelines or things that you must do. You must have a list of references at the end of each submission. In other words, not each question, but when you submit your document next week, Tuesday, at the end of that document, it must have at least three references on its list of references, or what's also called a bibliography. Okay. Then at the end of May, when you submit that, you must also have at least 3 references at the end of your submission. And then again, the middle of June, when you submit, you must have at least 3 references. In other words, sources that you've used. Now, your number one source, almost all of you, if you've got the textbook, you will just list the textbook as one of your at least 3 references will be the textbook. So that's one of them. And then all you have to do is visit a couple of websites, or possibly look at some other book if you have access to it, but simply websites will be sufficient. And just some guidance here. Listing various chapters of one book does not qualify as different sources. I had a couple of students last year just list different chapters in the same textbook. That doesn't count. There've got to be 3 or more separate sources. And by the way, one of the students from last year who got very good high marks, she didn't get high marks because of her list of references. She got high marks because her assignment was very good. But actually, once I had finished marking it and seeing it, I then went to look at her referencing, and she had a list of something like 19 different references, books and websites that she had visited. So she had gone above and beyond the call of duty, and it reflected in her work. Her submission was incredibly good. She got, I think it was something like 95% for that assignment. Now, I'm not saying you'll be marked down if you've only got 3 references. What I'm saying is, if you've got 3 references, 3 or more, that's going to be great. You're not going to lose marks, provided those references are there and they're done correctly. Kiara's asking, for those of us who are unable to purchase the textbook right now, is there any other way we can access the pages you've highlighted? Unfortunately not that I know of. unless you beg, borrow, and steal from classmates or whatever. I, I don't know of ways, but what I would suggest is if you haven't been able to get the book, or you've chosen not to get the book, then do some careful and good reading online or on websites. And by the way, Kiara, and for everybody, if your assignment is good and adequate, and your answers are great, and you've answered things well, I'm not going to mark you down if you don't have the textbook in your reference list. In other words, I will mark you on the merits of your submission and your answers. I don't mark you more or less because you've got more references or fewer references. Varsity College requires you to have looked at least 3 sources of information for your submissions, which is good academic expertise. And by the way, as you go further, if you choose to go any further in academics, you have to read very widely. And certainly once you get to honors and masters and PhD level, and I'm not suggesting you pursue that, but for those who do, you've got to, at PhD level, you've got to read hundreds of books and sources of information, hundreds. You look at an average PhD thesis, and their bibliography or list of references goes on for pages and pages, because it reflects that you're a very disciplined and widely read person. Now, what we are trying to instill at this stage of academics is the very basic principles of that. So why are we saying that is, read at least 3 books, or sorry, not 3 books, 3 sources of information, access 3 websites or the textbook and a few websites. Do that as at least you're doing the basic minimum. If you've only looked at one source, that does not constitute decent academic research. That's just copy and paste. Okay, so that's why we're saying read more widely. But coming back, Kiara, specifically to what I was saying, if you haven't got the textbook and chosen not to get it, do some decent Googling, online research based on the questions that have been asked and the marking rubrics that have been given and the specific title. So, if you look at the section headings that are required in the project proposal, all you have to do is go to Google and type in there project proposals or key components or key sections of a project proposal. Same with a feasibility study. Important sections to include in a project feasibility study. Always include the word project, because we're dealing within the context of project management. And I'm giving you guidance on how to go about accessing or researching this information. And now, project management is a very popular subject, and there is tons of information online on all of these aspects. So you could actually do very well without having the textbook, provided you read the questions carefully in the assignment, the marking rubrics, read them carefully, and do your Googling quite carefully. So hopefully I've answered your question, Kiara. Cool. Then coming back to the slide, as I said, at least 3 references. Listing various chapters of one book doesn't qualify as different sources. You must have in-text referencing, and you must list your sources correctly. Now, what I'm going to say is, on every page of your assignment, you should have at least 1 in-text reference. Okay, and I've got some examples to show you in a slide or 2 from now. So basically, on every page, you should, it's not a law that it must be every single page. For all of your questions, the person reading your assignment and anybody in academics looking at your assignment within an academic institution will immediately ask, where did you find this out? Where did you get this information? And now there's, and again, in the assignment, in the last couple of pages of the assignment, where it talks about referencing and plagiarism and so on, it gives you examples of what's common knowledge. So if I was saying, for example, the Second World War took place from 1939 to 1945, I wouldn't need to reference that, because that's what's known as common knowledge. If you've got any vague idea of history, you know that the Second World War took place from 1939 to 1945. Okay. Likewise, when did South Africa achieve its independence? On the 27th of April, 1994. I hope I'm right on that. It's definitely 1994. When was Mandela released? In 1990. Now, that's kind of common knowledge. It's stuff that's out there. But if you start talking about putting together a feasibility study for a project, and you're writing up a feasibility study, where did you find out what to include in a project feasibility study? That's not common knowledge. A lot of people know it, and anyone in an engineering or consulting environment dealing with projects and putting project proposals together would know. And it sometimes feels like it's common knowledge. And if you've got parents who've worked in that field, or you've done some of those things at school or elsewhere, and in your workplace you're familiar with putting reports together, you would know what goes into a feasibility study. You would know what goes into a proposal. However, not everyone knows that. And so where did you kind of pick that up? And again, you need to reference your sources properly. Now, most academic assessors or teachers will be skeptical of where you got your knowledge from in a healthy way, not a critical way, but they'll be saying, where did you pick up that information? I had a student last year who said, when it came to doing a risk analysis, and risk analysis needed to look at the impact of the risk and the chance of it happening. I'll talk about this later for the later submissions. But the chance of the risk impact if it happens, treatment. And he didn't reference that. And his argument was that everyone knows about risk analysis. And I said, as the teacher, I said, no. Actually, most people don't know about risk analysis. Most people don't know how to go about doing it. If you've worked in any kind of environment for a few years where risk has to be assessed, yes, you will know. But in terms of academic discipline, risk analysis isn't common knowledge. You actually have found that out from somebody from somewhere. And therefore, even if you knew it already, do a bit of Googling and reference the website that shows that source of information. Or if it's in the textbook, simply reference the textbook for that. Okay. So rather have too many references or err on the side of just let me put it simply, just put in references, even if you feel they're not needed. It's the safe option within this academic context. And then you must list your sources correctly. And as it says here at the bottom, academic integrity and discipline is important in a university context. It's part of the environment. And just to remind you, you may not scan an assignment into a PDF and submit it. You can print your document to PDF, a text PDF. So Safe Assign, when you submit, needs to be able to read your text. A scanned image cannot be read. So make sure it's readable. If it comes through with a 0 score, from Safe Assign, basically I don't mark it. It's like I have to send it back because it's now, how come it's not scoring anything here? And by the way, with Safe Assign, don't panic too much about high scores, because as soon as you start, particularly in submission 3 in June, it typically happens that because you are resubmitting quite a lot of your work, it will give a very high score. I do not put much emphasis on the specific score you get in Safe Assign when you upload and submit. What I'm more interested in is that it's done the scan, and I just basically I look myself as to whether it seems to be referenced correctly and plagiarized in any way. The score is just a useful flag at times, but there's no minimum score and there's no specific score that I say, okay, well, now we have problems, because you can actually have a low Safe Assign score and have plagiarized and vice versa. So you must do in-text referencing, which is the author, surname, and year after your answer that you give, and you must do a reference list on a separate page at the end of your text, and it must be in alphabetical order by surname of author. with a minimum of 3 sources. You don't put it in bullet points or numbering. It's just surname of author in alphabetical order. So here's some examples of in-text referencing, and for each answer you need not every single little paragraph, but certainly for each of the questions there should be an in-text reference of some sort. So here's an example. According to Guido Clements and Harinarain 2018, the project selection criteria are wara wara wara. Okay. Here's another one. The project selection process has 4 steps. Guido et al. 2018. Okay, that's and now just to note, the first time you quote a book or a source that has many authors, the first time you quote it, you list all of the names, and then from there on, if you reference that same work again, you only give the first name and say et al. Okay, so the project selection process has 4 steps, in brackets, Guido et al. 2018. Now that tells me it's the same book. The first author is Guido, and you don't have to mention Clements and Harinarain again because you've mentioned them once already. It's the same book. Then bibliography references, Project Management Institute 2017, a guide to the project management body of knowledge, PMBOK guide, 6th edition, Newton Square Project Management Institute Incorporated. That would be referencing the PMBOK. Here's another work, Donovan D. Ferreira N. and O'Donovan J. 2018, Project Management and Administration, 2nd edition, Cape Town, Edge Learning Media. That's the standard format for listing a book. You give the authors, the year of publication, the title, the edition if there is an edition number, the place of publication, and who the publisher is. Okay. Then you've got another example, What A 2014 Project Management, BC Campus Open Education. And then referencing websites. Here's an example, Team Gantt 2020, how to create Gantt charts online, available at, and you copy and paste the full URL, which is the website address, and after it in square brackets, you put the date on which you viewed that website. It was accessed on the 17th of March 2020. So it's when you accessed that website, when you viewed it. Okay. Here's another one, the Color Run 2020, about the Color Run, online, available at, full URL there, and it's accessed on the 9th of March 2020. In your list of references, you do not use the words et al. You list for books and so on that have more than one author, lots of authors, you list all of the authors in your list of references. And by the way, this list of references is wrong because it's not in alphabetical order by surname. It goes, so here, basically the Donovan and Ferreira book should come first, and then Project Management Institute book, and then Team Gantt, and then the Color Run, and then What would come last. So I've got that. If this was a single list of references, it would need to be in alphabetical order by surname. Please note, for the textbook that we are using, the author of the textbook is not Edge Education. The authors are Kun S, Anderson W, Jules Maquette R, Huxtable B, and Musagvanu T. Okay, and please watch this YouTube video. I'm assuming it's still there. I must actually double check it, but I'm pretty sure it'll still be there. It's a quick 12-minute video that will tell you exactly how to reference, how to paraphrase, how to do in-text referencing, and how to list your references for books and for websites. It's a Varsity College video that they put out. One of the librarian staff put it together, and it's a very comprehensive guide, very quick guide to referencing correctly, and it'll tell you what to do. Okay, and just some last examples from my side of in-text referencing. Here's an example. 5 indicators of project success criteria are budget, client expectation, quality, schedule, specification, and disruption. In brackets, Kun, Anderson, Jules Maquette, Huxtable, and Musakavanu 2020. This is the first time the student is referencing this book. So she lists all the authors. Then the next time you list them, and by the way, this first reference is where you state a fact and then you put in brackets where you got it from. The other way to do it is to, in the course of your text, reference it. And here you've got budget. According to Kun et al. In brackets 2020, when the project objectives are met within or under the predicted budget, it goes on to talk about it. Okay, so there's two ways you can reference things. You can state a fact, and then you put in brackets the authors and surname. And the first time you list a book with many authors, you list all of them, and thereafter you just say the first author and et al. Okay. Here's another example. Client expectations. When the project deliverables match or exceed all the client specifications and expectations, Meredith, Schaefer, and Mantle Jr. 2017, and thereafter you would refer to it as Meredith et al. 2017. Okay. So again, look at that video, read the guidance that you're given, and here's a website. No, for in-text referencing, is the page number important? Mingi, that's a very good question. It's not important if you are kind of presenting a concept or a fact that's been discussed in general and you are kind of putting it in your own words. However, if you are lifting out of the textbook a direct quote and it's in inverted commas and you say, Kun et al. State the following, and you have a direct quote, then you would put thereafter Kun et al. 2018, page 27, or wherever you got it from. So again, I'm not going to be too fussed about that level of detail. I just want to see that you have sourced relevant text and information. Okay, so for in-text referencing, if it's a direct quote, then the correct thing to do is, yes, you would include a page number of where you got that quote from. If it's a more general, in your own words discussion, but you're discussing something you picked up from a source, then you wouldn't put the page number. I trust that answers your question. Here's an example of a website that you're quoting. Freeze or Sorter V 2006, project success and failure. What is success? What is failure? And how you can improve your odds for success. 16 December 2003. Now that is the date that that website was written or published. Now most websites don't have that date. And if that date is not available to you, you just simply leave it out. That's the date that the website was written or published. And as I said, a lot of websites, you can't find that date. It's obviously in a book. In books, you can see the publication date on the first few pages. But on most websites, you don't have a date available. So just leave it out. You would simply leave out that date where it says here 16 December 2003. Then you write in brackets online, available at, and you copy and paste the full website address that somebody can just click on that and it jumps up and helps them. And then after that you say accessed 7 September 2017, whatever date that you accessed it. Okay. So that is some referencing guidance. I'm basically wrapped up for now. Are there any other specific questions that you have? Anything else you guys want to ask? Just want to see also, Nora. Any queries or questions from anybody? Okay, what I will do is I will put the recording of this session onto YouTube and send out an announcement of that, as well as the slides. And if you've got fellow students who are wondering what's happening and weren't here tonight, just refer them to this. But I will try and make sure that the YouTube video is uploaded sometime, preferably in the morning tomorrow. I have got other training online, so the assignment, hopefully you should have been told how to go about doing that. Yeah, good question, because you don't yet have access to the platform. So is that what you're saying, Ramon? Because once you have access to the platform, then the submission process is you upload through VC Learn, the Varsity College learning platform. Okay, so you do it through that. However, if this time next week or Tuesday week you still don't have access to that, then you're going to have to email it to me. Okay, and I will just clarify that with Varsity College as to what the correct protocol is, because there's meant to be kind of external or objective proof that you have uploaded or that you have submitted your assignment. And it might be that you are requested to email it to me and CC somebody else within the admin department of Varsity College as a double check proof that you have submitted in due time. But Ramon, can I just ask, if VC Learn is up and running and you have access to that, do you then know how to submit?
No, actually, I don't.
Yes.
But I'm
Okay.
sure I'll figure it out.
Well, let me just share quickly, and I'm just going to share my whole screen, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And now we're going to go into the tunnel of death, probably. Yep, there we go. Okay, I'm just going to take you through to not this course, but I'm going to take you through to another course where the upload thing should be available. In fact, it should be available on this site, but you don't have access to this as yet. Just a question or comment. Yeah, Ningi, right now it seems like none of you has access to VC Learn because you guys as students haven't been loaded on the system yet, and it's very annoying because it's not there. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. This is another module that I'm training. It's basically the same subject, but it's another group who are doing it as part of a degree program. And on the left-hand links here, it says here, there's integrity declaration for all submissions, and you have to click on that and do that. And then submission links. You click on that, and here it comes up. Firstly, there's an important note regarding submitting assessments. Read through that, make sure you read that carefully. And then it says part 1, part 2, and your final part of your portfolio of evidence. Click on that. And it takes you to, it tells us this is due on the 12th of April at 9 p.m. Total points of 100. And click the title above to submit. Actually, here you would upload. So you go and get your file, you browse local files, or I think you can even click and drag into this box. But you attach your Word document or your PDF of your assignment. And you agree to submit. You put any comments that you might want to add there, and then at the bottom you can submit or save a draft before submitting.
Okay.
But this button must be clicked by 20 past 25 past 9 on due date. If you're later than that, you risk it missing the deadline. So I just really encourage you, don't leave it to the last second. But that's basically how you go about doing it. It would have submission links here. Let me just go back to our course. If I just go here to, on my side, users, I just want to see if, yeah, you see, I'm the only person on the list. I'm the only person in the class. So they're trying to chase that. And what's not listed here is there aren't any submission links that I can see here. Evaluation, course tools, there's safe assign here. No, it's not showing yet, so they're going to have to put that together for you guys. Okay, but I'm hoping that in the next couple of days it'll come right, and the minute it is, I will let you guys know, and you must just also keep checking.
Okay, no problem.
Right.
And yeah, the other thing is there a specific format that you'd like us to follow actual
No.
documents on the Word document?
No, there's not a specific format, provided it's, your question numbering is correct. It's easy to follow, but there's not a specific format. So, Word document is good, failing which a PDF document, but a readable PDF, not just an image PDF.
Yeah. Okay, no problem.
Cool.
Thanks.
Well done. Thanks, Duff. Thanks,
Thanks.
Ramon. Good. Any other questions from anyone? Will it say that you have successfully submitted your assignment? Yes, once you have submitted, you should get, I think it's an email report saying that your assignment, your submission has gone through. So you do get confirmation. And by the way, what might be useful to do also is just do some screen grabs as you're going along. That when you've, just before you submit, perhaps do a screen grab to keep as your own proof. And then once you've submitted, whatever screen it comes up with, then do a screenshot of that. But it will send you some form of report to confirm that you have submitted. And by the way, if you submit, let's say you ahead of the game, you're ready to submit, and you submit tomorrow, and you submit, you can then go and do a second submission. Let's say you realize after you submitted that you made a mistake, and you've still got time to correct that mistake. You can go and submit, and basically you can submit a few times in the run up to the deadline. And once that deadline is met, it cuts off, and I mark the last submission. I will only mark the last submission. Okay, so just be mindful of that. Good. Any other questions? If not, I'll stay online a bit longer for those who want to perhaps stay on and ask any other questions, but you are free to go if you want to. But thank you very much for participating tonight, guys. Well done for attending. It was good to have you here, and go well in the run up to submitting your first section next week. And feel free to email me if you've got any queries or questions. So from my side, thanks, guys. I'll stay online a little bit longer if there are any further questions, but you're free to go. Cool. Thanks, Ryan. Cool. Well then, if there's nothing else, I'm going to stop the recording.